Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the TownSteel. This is their part number TLP-L 2 3/8 Essen US26D Designer Series Low Rose Style 2 3/8 Backset Privacy Function tubular lock with Essen plated lever satin chrome. So this is basically a privacy set by TownSteel. This is a design, a construction of lock. A tubular lock is what it is, but the trim will be compatible or can be used on their mortise locks is what I'm trying to say. So you can tie the same design throughout the space. So if you had tubular locks on the inside, tubular sets on the inside of the home, you could have mortise locks on the exterior and have all the trim completely matched. The trim, the rose design as well. This is a privacy. They of course make passage and dummy and probably an exit lock as well. There are links below this video, how to order, product catalog, installation instructions, and template. We're going to go through all that. There is some information down below this video. The Designer Series tubular lock offers a variety of trim selection. It comes with heavy-duty latch, available in passage, privacy, single dummy, and double dummy functions, 2 3/8 backset, low rose design, privacy, Essen plated lever trim. They say that it's satin chrome. The design of the lever knob surrounded by a ring provides a better protection to the lever knob. The design of the lever knob surrounded by a ring provides better protection to the lever knob. Okay. Not exactly sure what they mean there. I don't know. Maybe it'll come clear to me at some point. Let's go over the contents of the box. We've got paperwork. The lock is not light. It weighs about 2.8 pounds, something in that range, and does feature a relatively it does feature an upgraded system that's inherent to the design, and we'll go over that as well. Yeah, I'm not sure what they mean. Upgraded design, better protection. The design of the lever knob surrounded by a ring. You know, they might be meaning that you do get a fair amount of separation between the hardware. Other designs of locks, I think, are somewhat compromised by the fact that I think the lever makes undue contact with the rose, causing the material to not work very well. They've really isolated, you know, the mechanical turning, the aspect of the connection between the lever and its mounting post and its spring assembly. And that rose is really just a free-floating scalp plate. It's not connected at all to the hardware that allows you to bolt the material, bolt the lever ultimately through the lock. In other designs, the levers are set with set screws down to the spindle that goes through it. You have a mounting plate that's there, and then the rose threads onto that. What they might be saying by, you know, maybe separating the method of assembly provides better protection. But I am still a bit mystified as to what they mean. So let's move on. That's what the Essen lever looks like with its low profile rose. This is the outside. It has its two mounting posts. So that's Essen lever. 26D finish. This is a low profile rose. It hangs off, it projects off the face of the door a very small amount. You know, 3/8, I think it's technically 13/32. The overall length of the lever, and it does definitely feel substantial in the hand. There's no question about that. About 5 5/16, 5 5/8 maybe, overall length. It feels like it has a very good lever return. Snaps back up very well. Okay. There's a closer look at the rose only. This is a privacy, so it's going to have a hole through the rose that will be specifically intended for the privacy pin, which is indeed here. And you'll get two pieces, the privacy pin itself and then an extension. The extension is used when you have an 1 3/4 inch thick door, and let's take a look and discover how that works. And we were having a little trouble with the latch bolt and trying to figure out how the privacy pin was installed, and realized that they packaged the wrong latch bolt with this privacy set. They had a passage latch inside of there, and I thought, well, I've installed plenty of decorative levers and I understand how this works. What am I doing wrong? Check the rest of the boxes, and indeed there's a total of 10 locks that are here. Yeah, they had latch bolts. They had privacy, 2 3/4 privacy latch bolts in 2 3/8 passage boxes. So I went through all the boxes and organized all of that. Grumpy old man, grumpy old man. The proper privacy latch has this feature on it, this little component that's inside of here, okay, that you're going to connect your privacy pin to. And ultimately, what it's going to look like, it's going to look like this, basically. Okay, this is going to stick through the rose. When you're in the unlocked position, and I'll put it on the opposite side, your latch is going to retract just fine. When I push that in, I don't have any action on this. If the door gets pushed closed, it will unlatch itself. So that's the privacy pin. You're going to use that if you've got an 1 3/4 inch thick door, is how that's going to be. So that works. We got that straightened out. The rest of the components, you're going to get your spindle, you're going to get your 2 mounting screws, you're going to get your faceplate for the latch bolt, your T-strike for the frame, your interior rose, and then before we get to the paperwork review quite properly, there is this piece of equipment here that's called latch support. Latch support. I just crimped those down a little bit, and there's a reason why. So a very, I think, a unique aspect to the design here from TownSteel is this latch support. These 2 little grooves that are prepped here, you're going to slide that right over, okay? After the latch bolt gets installed, you clip that on there. To demonstrate its value, what the role of this item is it helps prevent severe overturning or over twisting of the trim, helping prevent undue stress that it would otherwise put on the latch bolt. Okay, there we go. So you've got your 2 mounting posts here, and as I rotate this, I can tell that I get a very, I would have to exert an enormous amount of force to get the spindle and the bolts to continue to move through the circle as I rotate it when this is installed. This forces the two mounting bolts to stay at 12 and 6 and does so very effectively. I can crank it to break it naturally, but this makes standard usage, all the time kind of usage, because you, bam, and you hit that stop portion. And this latch bolt support is really a great idea. Piece of galvannealed wipe coat galvanized steel. Great idea from TownSteel. All right, now let's back up and let's hit the how to order. It's a very simple document. It's going to show you the trim series. You're going to have a TLL for passage. It's the functions is what this is. An L is a passage. A P is a privacy. The difference between the two, you're going to have a different latch bolt. You're going to have roses with a hole drilled in it on both sides. The privacy pin is on the inside. The hole is on the outside. If that's locked, I would be able to stick in there, you know, what would I have laying around the house? Well, I suppose a straight piece of coat hanger would do it. I'd be able to stick that through there, pop that button out, and be able to rotate the lever to get in. S for single dummy, P for dummy pair. So a single dummy is probably just going to come equipped to surface mount to the door. This would be a single dummy, a couple of screws, surface mount it, put your rose on, you're done. A double dummy is going to be exactly like this, where it'll have two mounting posts, and then your two screws, and it will mount through the door. They'll mount to each other. I don't know because I don't have a single or a double dummy here, but I would expect that the levers are rigid, that this spring return mechanism underneath the mounting area is going to be different, where it will not prevent rotation at all. I don't know how that's achieved, but they must achieve that somehow. You don't want dummies being, you know, able to be rotated. Then an exit lock. An exit lock is a one-sided lever. There's a operable lever on the non-secure side. There's a latch bolt, and there's nothing on the secure side of the door. You would use that possibly if you had your residential application. You had doors going out to a balcony. Yeah, you might want no trim on the outside at all. So there's literally nothing there to touch to try to manipulate. Then you've got your rose designs. Bevel, curve, flat, heritage, low. We're doing the low one here. Square, vintage, or Latvia short. We'll look at those when we get to the product brochure. Your backset, 2 3/8 or 2 3/4. We'll have a discussion about backset when we get to the template. Then your lever and your finish. You'll see the product brochure for that. And then they give an example of how to go about and order the entire lock that you see there. So that's handy. It gives you an idea of what to expect, how to build the lock part number. Now, when we get to the next document, when we get to the product brochure document, that will allow you a complete overview of initially all of the lever designs that are available. A lever and knob design. There are 1 or 2 knobs there. Well, actually there's 3 knobs. So lots of really nice looking levers. I can tell you from that list that the Essen lever is a common lever that I see nowadays. Either geometrically flat like that, or the variations on an Essen lever, which might be like the Bond Short, where it's rounded. And the Milan would be an example of that as well. All of these are fairly common levers in the fact that they're reminiscent across all manufacturers of lever designs. The Latvia, that's a departure from stuff that you'd see elsewhere. But looking at the Blaine knob is I think unique to TownSteel, that shape. But everything else you can kind of find elsewhere. Meaning, if you like something by one manufacturer, you're going to find something by TownSteel that you're probably going to love. The NSL2, that's an interesting turn ring sort of scenario. That would be a flush pull ring concept like you would see, believe it or not, in a racquetball court. You'd probably have to exert energy to make that flush with the face of the door, but nonetheless, it's just a turn ring. That might be neat to be used in those applications where you cannot suffer any projecting hardware other than the base of the material. A situation might be really nice if you had a bedroom, a short hallway to maybe a bathroom, then on either side flanking the hallway you would have closet space. Yeah, it'd be pretty nice to have that NSL2 trim so that you're not having levers projecting out into the opening. That might be awfully nice to consider that. You keep going on, there's more trims. There are more levers, stainless steel levers. Thumb turns they have listed there as well, which don't belong to tubular locks, but this document does lead us into additional levers, but ultimately into mortise locks as well, and trim that go with it. So from that catalog, you can tie together an entire project based on a unified lever design. So that is a very nice feature. When you get to the back of the catalog, you encounter the how to order again for the tubular stuff and for the mortise locks. Mortise locks are a different video altogether. Now, template, then installation instructions. Let's take a look at the template. The template is a fairly complex document showing lots of holes. It would be really better if they didn't show so many darn holes. But the reason they're showing lots of holes is because they're accounting for 3 door thicknesses and 3 door edge provisions. 2 back sets are all drawn there. So lots of variations. 3 times 2 times 2. You've got 12 possible scenarios. No, 3 times 3 times 2. 18 possible scenarios just in this one template. So first of all, the 3 on the left-hand side is the strike. Let's just tackle it left to right. Here's the strike. This is what we would call a 2 3/4 T-strike. If you use your imagination, you can see why we would call it a T-strike. It is indeed 2 3/4 tall. Its overall width is going to be about 1 7/8 inches. Okay. Strikes are measured from the center line of the screw hole to the edge of the lip, however. And this is really about 1 5/16 inches, maybe 1 3/8 inches. That's the important dimension. I would tell you that I think this lip is a little bit longer than necessary for the application. Obviously, if they're planning on you being able to put this onto a 2-inch thick door, yeah, you'd need a little longer lip. It would really be nice to see a lip length shorter than this, because with an 1 3/8 inch door, you could certainly get by with a lip length, closer to 3/16 shorter than this. Projecting hardware unnecessarily off the face of the door is not a good idea, and is in fact to be avoided in all instances. And in fact, to speak technically about it, it would be improper to call out this strike on an 1 3/8 inch door when there is a better option. But nonetheless, people don't necessarily think about that, nor should you. But from my perspective, dealing with hardware in a detailed sort of perspective, I would prefer to see a lip length a little bit shorter, more appropriate. How you're going to mortise that? A router is the way to go. If you've not bought the door and frame already prepped, you're going to want to have a router that's going to do the majority of the work. You're going to make your preparation 2 3/4. That's going to be 1 1/4. I am almost positive. 1 1/8, forgive me. That's going to be awfully thin, probably about 40 thousandths maybe. Back here, you're going to want to prep, you're going to need to prep it deeper for the latch bolt to, reside within the space of what we're dealing with. So you're going to need to make accommodation for that. One thing that I will tell you that I don't like is that they don't include a dust box. A dust box is a metal or plastic rectangular shaped piece of hardware that is the same height of the strike, that goes behind the strike, and has a recessed, closed-off area here so that none of the interior wall construction can creep through the hole and escape into the living space. They should offer dust-proof strikes. Now, they shouldn't offer them. They should be automatically included. They're not selling low-end hardware here, so a dust-proof strike should be included. If you're dealing with a 3/4 inch jamb, and you probably are, don't drill that hole all the way to the outside of the jamb. You really only need to route that hole maybe about 3/8 deep into your wood frame. So route it only 3/8 deep so that you are inherently giving yourself protection from that wall material coming through. In fire-rated door applications, and I don't know that these are fire-rated at all. If we come across it, we will discuss it. In a fire-rated application, you really don't want that material creeping through your the hole in the strike into your lock set. That mineral core material that you can get out of drywall is quite corrosive to the healthy operation of lock sets. They do bear, yeah, the mortise locks are UL listed for use on fire-rated doors. The tubular locks, I don't see a specific call out to them being approved for use on fire-rated doors. So be mindful of that. I don't see it. The latch bolts are not labeled at all. None of the parts here are labeled. I would conclude that they are not appropriate for use on a fire-rated door like you would have on a attached garage door. Garage to a mudroom scenario. That's going to need a listed lock because that is going to be a fire-rated door in most instances. Now back to the template. Moving to the right, you see those 3 1-inch diameter concentric circles. That just refers to the door thickness. So try to focus on only one hole that's necessary. That is going to be the hole that's drilled in the edge of the door, in the style of the door. You get over further, you get to the 2 1/8 inch hole, and they're calling out 2 back sets, 2 3/8 and 2 3/4. So when I go about prepping holes in doors for locks, of which it is something I've done thousands of times on every type of door, using every type of tool, $5 lock installation kits all the way up to a $250,000 CNC router, everything in between. I've used bits, saws, Forstner style. I've used spade. I've used flat-ended cutters, multi-spur bits, routers, manual and computer driven. I can tell you that in my opinion that the easiest way to do this by hand, and some people love lock installation kits that cost a few $100s and basically give you a multi-spur bit and clamp onto the door and allow you to drill it at the right backset. I think those are great. I don't argue with people who love them, who swear by them. I think they're a lot of money for something that really doesn't give you money's worth, because measuring a door for a lock is what's the dimension from the top of the door to the center. Okay, great. What's the back set? Great. Mark the hole. Okay, so it's easy. I then use a Lennox bimetal hole saw with my arbor on it, which might be a 1/4 inch, and I just start drilling. And what I love about the hole saw is, and it's a bimetal product, so the teeth are relatively fine, which means they're not great for cutting wood because they are a relatively fine tooth pattern, which would be good for steel. But what makes them great about wood is that when you cut into the door, the teeth are fine. You're not ripping the veneer. You're actually scoring it. And then you're cutting it, in a very controlled, fine fashion. The other nice thing about the hole saw is the hole saw, when it's going to be whatever, 1.25 deep or 1.5 deep, when you bring that to the face of the door, if you're crooked, you're going to know immediately because you're not cutting evenly around the circumference of the bit. You can immediately correct that and then start drilling straight. The very concept of the hole saw, because it's capturing the core on the inside of the bit, keeps you straight. It's really difficult to drill a crooked hole with a hole saw. I let the arbor pierce through the other side, pull the tool out, remove my core material. That's a downside of the hole saw. You've got stuff that you've got to work out of there. go to the other side of the door, finish it off, and that core material will usually flake out. That's a very small investment. And I've drilled dozens and dozens of doors with a single hole saw. Dozens. Then for the edge, mark the center of the thickness of the door, 1-inch fly bit. Super cheap. Bosch makes one with some, and I'm sure everybody else does, but Bosch makes one with a couple of outside cutters that will score the hole before your fly bit starts to come and cut the material. Gives me a nice clean hole. Drill that all the way down to your 2 1/8 inch hole. Stop right there. Don't pull the tool out until the drill bit's done spinning. Take that out. You're in great shape. Then I would have a template. I'd clamp it onto the edge of the door and take my router and make my 2 1/4 by 1 inch wide prep for my latch bolt. That would be 5/32 of an inch deep. I can tell you that that would also be the depth. It is listed there. 1 inch wide, 2 1/4 tall. Okay. Now, however, I skipped over the 3 lines. The high bevel, if you look, the vertical lines. High bevel, then another line, then a low bevel. So 3 vertical lines. Goodness, what is that talking about? Well, it's a very important concept that can really, you know, you've got all your tools and you're doing a great job and you love the work so far and it's coming out great, and then you've got a beveled edge door and you didn't realize what you were dealing with because you started drilling through the door and you did the whole routine, and then you put your hardware on, you realize, well, that seems to be off a little bit. Why is my center line off a little bit? It shouldn't be. And you check your dimension. No, the dimension's good. Well, the trouble is, and I know it because I've done it, how many different preparations on doors on the edge can you actually have? I'm thinking of 4 off the top of my head, and I'm sketching them out. Okay, square, beveled, radiused, rabbited. The question is, where is backset defined from? If you have a square edge door, ignorance is bliss. You don't have to worry about anything. But if you have a radiused edge door, where is the backset actually referred to? Here or over here? If you have a rabbited edge door, just forget about it. I have no idea what I'm doing. But bevel is what we're talking about here. So luckily, the door hardware industry defines that value for us, and that value is 1/8 in 2. And it's expressed like that, 1/8 in 2. What that means is for every 2 inch in door thickness, you have 1/8 of an inch in bevel. So if this door here was 2 inch thick, the difference between those 2 points would be 1/8 of an inch. Our door is 1 3/4, so it's going to be ever so slightly less than 1 3/8. You now get the concept of, wait a minute, if I have a beveled edge door and I hook my tape measure on the pull side of the door, the big side of the door, and I go over to 2 3/8, I've actually not gone over far enough. And if you do that on the push side of the door and you go over to 2 3/8, you've actually gone over too far. So those holes, not a major big deal, but you're off. You're off almost 1/8 of an inch, right? You're off. So that's why they have those 3 lines, because you will, that paperwork, you're going to line the door in a beveled edge scenario according to your door. The low side is always going to be the push side. The high side is always going to be the pull side. Okay, that's how that's defined. So do that correctly, and you'll be right as rain. Really critical. A 2 1/8 inch hole. You know, if you're off, it's probably not going to matter with a lock like this. There's lots of margin built in. But if you have a door viewer, and the distance between the diameter of the body of the door viewer and that small little trim part is probably less than, 0.2 inch. Okay, there's so by the time your hole is off, you have a tiny amount of margin covering the hole that's wrong on that door. So that's why you got to be really careful about your bevel. Put a square edge onto the edge of your door. That's what you do. So that really covers how to go about prepping everything and how I would do it if it was just kind of one-off material. If you've got a shop, you know, you're going to have some tools that are going to assist you to do it. But in a cheap and easy and really effective, fast way to do it, you know, lay that tape measure, mark your center line. Kwikset also makes a backset finding tool. It's basically an L-shaped piece of aluminum that you put right on the edge of the door. You can mark your door thickness, then come over to the face and mark the face of the door. 2 3/8, 2 3/4, inch and 3/8 thick, inch and 3/4 thick. You can't go wrong with it. That's what I would always use. Mark it, I'm ready to roll. If I know I'm only doing 2 3/8 backset, I put a piece of tape over the 2 3/4. If I know I'm doing only inch and 3/4, I'll kind of mark off that inch and 3/8. Because you get into a routine, I would spend a Saturday machining a couple of dozen doors by hand, and you need to automate that as best as you can and eliminate from the process potential mistakes that you might make. So that I put a piece of masking tape over it. Now, getting to the installation instructions, they are really simple and straightforward, but they do miss the privacy pin conversation here. I cannot find installation instructions on their site at all for a privacy function. Not a big deal at all, because by the time you install this, you're going to have 1 or 2 pieces of hardware left over. If you have an inch and 3/4 door, though, you're going to want to treat the privacy pin first. So the process of assembling the door is also the process of going through and making sure we have all the parts. Let's do that first. I've got my latch. I've got my faceplate. We're going to handle the screws separately. I've got my exterior lever with rows and mounting posts. I have my latch support. I have my outside and inside spindle assemblies as we're getting through the door. I have my interior mounting plate with my lever. That's going to have to come off with the set screw to get the rows on. Some levers you don't have to pull it off with the Essen, you have to remove it. 4 screws, 2 for the latch, 2 for the strike. Then we're left with the 2 mounting screws that will go on the inside trim. They're going to go to the mounting posts. Okay, they're just going to tie together. 2 of those screws. Then lastly, your privacy pin. If you've got an inch and 3/4 thick door, get your latch bolt installed. The bolt itself is going to freewheel. Don't worry about that. Make sure this is positioned on the proper side of the door, the interior of the bathroom, the non-secure side. You get that threaded in once you get it installed. Latch bolt in first, faceplate on, the 2 screws. Be sure to pre-drill those holes for the screws because you don't want to split the edge of your beautiful door. Pre-drilling it, there are some rules to follow for that. These screws are combination wood machine screws. They are appropriate for use in either wood or metal. If you're going to pre-drill into wood, take about 80% of the root diameter of the screw, the body of the screw less the threads. If you're dealing with a hardwood in a softwood species or MDF, if you're dealing with a hardwood species, you probably want to kick that up to the root diameter or maybe 90% of the root diameter. I am a big fan of wire size drill bits because that allows me a far more incrementally correct perspective on what I'm drilling. The caliper after the router is the woodworker's best friend in my opinion. You can measure that root diameter, know exactly what you're dealing with, measure your drill bits. So if you're dealing with an inch and 3/4 door, get the extension put on. Then at that point, you bring your outside, at that point you put your latch support on. Then you bring your outside trim. You have first, however, installed your spindle. Forgive me, I've gone a little bit too fast. You've got a screw here. They've got this as the outside portion. Put the 2 spindles, they don't go through at all like some other manufacturers do. These are machined a little bit smaller on the very tip so that they don't go all the way through. Get your latch assembly in and installed. Tighten that screw down. They've got that as the outside. I got to tell you, I don't really know why. I would prefer to put that on the inside. I don't see why it matters. Anyway, you'll get that tightened all the way down. These screws have thread lock on them, so I'm not going to force them all the way down. Then you bring your outside trim. Okay. Then you bring your inside trim with your 2 screws. Tighten that up. You can test for proper operation. You can then get your privacy pin installed through the hole in the rose, and you're going to thread it into that, into the feature on the latch bolt. Okay. Privacy, push it in. These levers, as we demonstrated earlier, will not work. If the door is closed, it'll unlock. Okay. At that point, the only work you have left to do is to put the strike on. And you will have, of course, pre-drilled that as well. You're going to want to be very careful not to split your beautiful frame either. And that covers the installation instructions, and we have no parts left over. Prepare door cutout per template, going through the installation instructions. Install tubular latch and faceplate into the prepared door. Install spindles in the tubular latch per the exploded view, hand tighten only. Yes, use screwdrivers. Don't use 18-volt cordless drills. That's going to strip something. Over tightening the screws is going to prevent proper operation of the door altogether, so be mindful not to do that. Install the latch support. Press onto the tubular latch as we demonstrated earlier. Install the outside lever assembly. Install the 2 mounting posts. These may be installed already at the factory with the rows already on. They were in this case. Install the inside lever assembly. Use the number 2 mounting screws to fasten. Right? Press the inside rows on. Some lever designs, the rows will not fit over the lever. There's a small set screw. Pull the lever off. Loosen the set screw. Don't remove it. Just loosen it. Pull the lever off or knob. Rows on. Lever back on. Tighten it back down. It will just pressure fit. Check lock for correct operation. Make any adjustments necessary. Definitely check it for correct operation, because if you've over-tightened something, it won't work really well at all. You're going to want to make sure that your privacy function operates. You're going to want to make sure that the pin, you're going to want to make sure that the privacy function unlatches when you close the door, and when you rotate the inside lever. That needs to function properly. You don't want someone getting locked into the bathroom. It's not funny. I was a child and my great-grandmother was locked in the bathroom. She couldn't get the privacy set opened. And now, knowing today what I know, made that all incredibly understandable. Luckily, my entire mother's side of the family were all carpenters. All of them. One guy was an electrical engineer. So they were able to get the situation mitigated. The problem that was happening there is that the latch bolt didn't retract fully into the housing of the body, and this latch bolt does a really good job. The only reason it's not fully retracted is because you have a faceplate that's going to be installed that will pick up that space. And plus, I suspect that the margin between the door and the jamb were too tight to begin with. You know, a carpenter's house, their carpentry is never done. So be sure to check it all. You don't want to, do the work on the job site, get 30 minutes in Friday afternoon traffic for your client to call and say, hey, the lever came off in my hand. You need to come back. That's never fun. Now, finally, there is a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the TownSteel products that we sell, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I like TownSteel. They do have some designs that people are certainly attracted to. They also have a generally their inventory is good. If there's some, I have found that there are instances of material that they simply didn't have in stock, and they said, well, listen, we haven't sold one of those in 5 years. Okay, so what do you have, sort of scenario. How I first became familiar with TownSteel is because of their ligature-resistant offering. They are, when they were first introduced to me, they have a substantial, diverse, available supply of ligature-resistant options, locks for use in psychiatric applications. So you might find that material appropriate for some applications that you're bumping into. And there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all the TownSteel products that we have, but a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. Any questions on the TLP-L 2 3/8 privacy set, satin chrome, Essen lever, low rose projection, or any other TownSteel product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.